The notification hits and your first instinct is to do something. Re-verify the account, hit appeal, log in from your phone just to check, message support and ask what happened. Maybe log back in again just to see if it was a mistake. Almost every one of those instincts makes things worse. A proper response to a flagged account starts with understanding what actually happened to that account before you touch it again. And that's what this whole video is about. I run proxy and cloud phone infrastructure out of Singapore for teams managing large account fleets. So flags are not a rare event for me. They're a normal part of the week, sometimes several times a day across a fleet. And in years of doing this, the operators who lose accounts permanently are almost never the ones who got flagged in the first place. They're the ones who panicked in that first hour and turned a soft flag into a hard permanent ban through their own reaction to it. So let's start with what flagged actually means, because most people treat it as one single thing, and it isn't. Platforms don't have a single ban button somewhere that gets pressed. Trust and safety systems score accounts continuously, in the background all the time whether you're logged in or not. A flag is usually one of three different things happening under the hood, and they are not interchangeable. The first is a soft flag, where the account is quietly rate limited or shadow reviewed. Nothing dramatic shows up, the account just gets less reach or fewer actions go through or things feel slower than usual. The second is a hard restriction, where specific actions get blocked outright, like posting, messaging, or withdrawing funds. The third is a review lock, where the account is frozen pending an actual review, either by a human or by a second-tier automated model, and that review is often tied to a document request or a selfie verification. These three get very different treatment, so figuring out which one you're looking at matters before you do anything else. A soft flag can genuinely resolve itself if you just leave it alone for a while. A hard restriction usually means a specific rule engine caught one specific action you took, and it's worth knowing which action that was. A review lock means a person, or something close to a person, is going to sit down and look through that account's whole history. And here's the part people miss. Anything you do to the account between now and then becomes part of that history they're reviewing. So check the language in the interface before you decide on a response. Unusual activity, temporarily limited, verify it's you, and under review are four different signals, and they are telling you four different things about what's actually happening on the backend. Treat them as the same thing and you'll pick the wrong response almost every time. Now let's go minute by minute, starting with minutes 0 to 5, and the instruction here is simple. Stop touching the account. Do not log in again right away. Do not switch to a different Wi-Fi or a mobile network and try again from there. Do not open the app on a totally different device just to see if it's only that browser giving you trouble. Every single login attempt after a flag is itself a new signal being fed into the system. And rapid re-logins from different fingerprints or different IPs right after a flag is one of the more obvious patterns a detection system is built to catch, because that is exactly what a script does, and it's exactly what a panicking human does too. If you're running that account through a dedicated environment, an antidetect browser profile or a cloud phone, the correct move in those first 5 minutes is to leave it exactly as it is. Don't close the profile, don't reset it, don't clear cookies or cache thinking that will help. If this account does end up in front of a reviewer later, an environment that shows a stable, consistent device and network fingerprint over time is a far better data point for that account than an environment that just changed right at the moment of the flag. Minutes 5 to 15, this is where you check the environment, not the account itself, and honestly this is the step almost everyone skips, because everyone wants to jump straight to the appeal. But this is the step that actually determines whether the exact same thing is about to happen to every other account you're running. So ask yourself 3 questions here, and take them seriously. Question 1. Did this account share a fingerprint, a canvas hash, or a device profile template with another account that also got flagged recently? If you're running a bunch of accounts through the same antidetect browser profile template without enough entropy built in between them, platforms can and do cluster those accounts together by similarity, even when there's no shared IP address at all. That clustering alone can be enough to drag a clean account down with a dirty one. Question 2. Did this account share a residential or mobile proxy exit with another account that got flagged, or with an account that changed its behavior sharply right before this happened? proxy pools that get reused too tightly across a lot of accounts, or that recycle IPs that were recently burned by some other user sharing that same subnet, are one of the most common causes of flags that look, on the surface, like a behavior problem, when really it's infrastructure bleed coming from somewhere else entirely. Question 3. Did the account's own session pattern change right before the flag happened? A new device showing up, a new city, a login at a strange hour it's never logged in at before, or a sudden burst of activity after a long quiet stretch. Detection systems weight sudden deviation from an account's own established baseline very heavily, more heavily honestly than the raw volume of whatever action you took. An account that's always quiet and suddenly does a lot, fast, stands out far more than an account that's always been active doing the same volume. And if you find a shared fingerprint or a shared IP sitting behind another flagged account, that's your real problem right there, not the one account you started looking at. It means every other account sitting on that same piece of infrastructure is at risk right now, today, not just the one that already tripped the flag. Minutes 15 to 30, now go back through what the account actually did in the days leading up to the flag, not what you assume it did from memory. Look at posting frequency, message volume, follow or connection actions, any automation you had scheduled and running, and any change in the proxy or device that account was using during that window. Pull the real log, not your recollection of it. Most flags trace back to one of a small handful of patterns, and it's worth knowing them by name. A spike in repetitive action, like the same message template going out to a lot of different people. A burst of activity right after a long dormant period with nothing happening. An action taken immediately after a session or device change, like posting the second you switch to a new phone, or contact with other accounts that were already flagged before this one. You're hunting for the specific thing that actually moved the account's risk score, not settling for a vague feeling that the algorithm just doesn't like me today. Phones permas or pians, seriously write it down somewhere. If you end up appealing, or if you're deciding later how to warm that account back up, you need a clear record of the one thing not to repeat, because doing it again is how a soft flag turns into a permanent one on the second pass. Minutes 30 to 45. Now decide whether to appeal right now or hold off. Appealing immediately is not automatically the right call, and a lot of people assume it is. If what you're looking at is a soft, automated rate limit, filing an appeal just puts a human reviewer in front of an account that probably would have recovered on its own, and now you've drawn direct attention to something that didn't need it. If instead it's a review log tied to identity or policy, waiting can mean the review queue clears it without any escalation at all. Or it can mean the restriction hardens the longer it sits there, and that part genuinely depends on the platform's own internal process, which you don't control and shouldn't try to guess at. If you do decide to appeal, describe what actually happened, plainly. Don't invent a story built around what you think the reviewer wants to hear, because reviewers are looking at the exact same account history you just pulled in the last step, and any gap between your appeal story and the account's own logs reads far worse than filing no appeal at all. Minutes 45 to 60, and this is the step that really separates a bad hour from a genuinely bad month. Once you know whether the flag traced back to behavior or to shared environment, act on your other accounts, not just the one sitting in front of you right now. If the cause traces back to a proxy or a device shared across multiple accounts, isolate the rest of that batch immediately. Give them their own dedicated residential or mobile IPs and their own separate browser profiles or cloud phone instances, instead of leaving them sitting on the same pool that just produced a flag. That does not mean logging into all of them at once from some new setup just to check on them, because that burst of simultaneous logins is its own activity signal, and it's a fairly obvious one. And don't rush to migrate every other account to new infrastructure all at once either. A sudden simultaneous environment change across your whole fleet is itself a pattern that stands out to the exact systems you're trying to avoid triggering. Move accounts one at a time, spaced out over hours or days, and let each one settle quietly into its new environment before you go back to normal, regular use on it. So what is the first hour actually for if it's not for fixing the account? Honestly, most of what determines whether that account recovers was already decided before the flag ever happened, by whatever led up to it, and by whatever timeline the platform's own review process runs on internally, which you don't get to see. The first hour is really for stopping yourself from stacking new risk signals on top of the old one, for figuring out whether the problem is isolated to this one account or systemic across your setup, and for making sure one flagged account doesn't quietly turn into 5 flagged accounts by the end of the week. None of this guarantees an account comes back, and honestly, anyone telling you a specific recovery percentage is just guessing, so I'm not going to give you one either. What you can actually control is whether your infrastructure gives each account a clean, consistent, isolated footprint from the very start, so that one flag stays one flag, instead of becoming a pattern across your entire fleet that costs you a lot more than one account. I run these farms myself, so when I point you at the proxies or cloud phones I actually use, you're seeing the real stack, not an affiliate guest pod of a comparison chart somewhere. If you're building or auditing this kind of setup yourself, isolation and consistency is really the whole job, from antidetect browser profiles to residential and mobile proxy assignment to cloud phones and warm-up pacing done properly. Full written guides and tested picks are up at multiaccountops.com, so go take a look, and if this was useful, subscribe for the next one.